A lot of you dice goblins have been suggesting druid or flower themed dice for quite a while, and I couldn't just make one, so I had to make a set for the Circle of the Land and Circle of the Moon druids. So if you like druids, check out these wild shapes. Because I'm making two different dice, I wanted to use two different styles of molds to get two completely different products. So I'm using my old rounded edge mold set and the sharp edge dice set that I've made in previous videos. If you want to know how to make these molds, please check out those videos. I'll put a link up in the top right now. First thing you want to do is make sure that you tape them closed so that nothing leaks out the side. And now, immediately, let's get to what the important stuff is here, which is that my nail game is not on point, but mostly we're going to use these flowers to make some awesome looking flowery druid dice. It also comes with these little petal ones, which we'll get into in a bit, but first off, we need to start looking at what resin we're going to use. I like using Resin Obsession for casts like this because it's honestly a higher quality resin than Art and Glow, and it flows much easier. And when you're going to throw something in resin like this, it's important that it gets into all the nooks and the crannies, and I know Resin Obsession will do that, so I like using it. Now, I mix up 90 milliliters, which is too much. Honestly, you could make this whole set in 80 or maybe even 70, depending on the size of your molds. I made too much because I definitely didn't want to run out. So I mix it up for about 2-3 minutes so that it's completely and thoroughly mixed. And then I do add about 4 drops of this liquid glitter. It makes it just have a little bit shinier of an appearance, but it doesn't absolutely overcrowd the flowers. It still lets the flowers be the star. Because I have a limited amount of time, I use 2 pipettes so that I can get them in quicker, and these are the specific tiny flower ones that we're going to use. I like this color scheme. I think it'll make for an awesome land druid. Now, first thing I want to do is take some resin and put it to the bottom of the molds, maybe just a few milliliters, enough to where you can't accidentally put flowers all the way to the bottom. Now I'm trying this brute force method, which ends up working. I was gonna redo it if it didn't, but honestly, why overcomplicate it if you don't need to, right? So what I do is I take these flowers and kind of bunch them up into small enough bushels to where I can take tweezers and jam it into the sprue hole of my mold. When they're in there, they naturally expand because it's not filled with resin, and that's all I need it to do. I need the leaves to expand and fill the crevices in the air. And if they don't, honestly, it looks like a bushel of flowers, and that's not a bad thing either. I'm fine with either result. I happen to mostly get the expanding style, and that works out for me. I was really happy with that. All the different colors make up each different dice. You're more than welcome to do all one color, or maybe even mix match colors on certain sets, like the D10s being the same since they're both percentiles, but that's up to you. After you do that, make sure you take your resin and fill it all the way back up. You're not near done with your resin, right? You need to actually fill the whole thing. So make sure you do that, but when you do, push it all the way to the bottom. We still want the resin to flow from the bottom up. For the second set, I used 2 drops of the blue food coloring. This is essentially the same recipe I did for my Tesseract blue style dice from my sharp edge video. I thought it would look really good for a moon druid dice set, and I think it does. There is a problem here that I will warn you against. These are the colors that I pick. Some of those colors you can't really see because of how dark the blue is. I thought that maybe it would add some cool contrasts and differences. There's a few that really pop in there. The pink looks good and the red looks good, but honestly the black one doesn't even show up. You can just kind of see outlines and squiggles. It still looks good, but it doesn't look as good as the other ones. So if you're gonna do a dark kind of more transparent set with something like blue or red, I highly recommend really contrasting colors of flowers on the inside. Hindsight's 20/20, that seems very obvious to me now, but it didn't then. So go ahead and fill up the rest of your mold and then prepare to put them in your pressure pot. You can absolutely do this without pressure pots, but because you're using small little flowers and petals, wholly expect to see a bunch of bubbles in your dice if you don't have a pressure pot. But again, you can absolutely do it. So it's up to you. If you don't have one, don't worry too much about it. I have one, so I'm gonna, and I wanted it to be crystal clear, and this is the best way to make that happen. So here is the dice just straight out of the mold. They've got the sprues still on them. I think they look great. I took pictures like this and threw it up on Twitter and said, hey, what color would you want me to ink these? And we'll get to that in a minute. I think the D6 is one of my favorites because it looks like it's growing right out of the dice. This is the Moon Druid set. You can see the red ones and the white one and the pink really does pop on the inside there, but some of the other ones just don't as much. I still like them and I wanted to move forward with them because I think they're a valuable set. But now let's go ahead and talk about removing the sprues. So with the sprues, I take some hobby shears and just squeeze until they go flying. And by flying, I mean really flying. So a big chip will come off and it will go flying around your room. So I'm using my patent pendant, put the sprue inside a garbage bag and then cut it from there so that it can't go flying around your room. Cut it until you get an edge roughly like this, and then I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit here because I have a polishing video that shows you how to get rid of those edges. I highly recommend you check that out. This is the result that you get afterwards. You won't really have any problems with your edges and you'll have very clean dice. I'll link that up in the top right as well so that you can get really equally shiny sides for the entirety of your dice. Now that we have that though, let's talk about inking. Twitter pretty much said gold or green, and I agreed. I think those are great. Red would look awesome, but it's not really the Druid theme I'm going for. So I take a powder green and a palm leaf green and mix them together. I kind of wanted something in between to start off first, and I thought this was going to be a good mix. So I take some water, just dripping it off of my fingers because I want it to be a little runny or too thick, and it's really hard to work with. And I take a really, really tiny brush. I'm doing some miniature painting style close-ups here so that you can see, but I try and brush it in the cracks as much as I can of the numbers so that I don't have too much excess paint, and then I wipe it off with my thumb. This screen was a little too bright for my liking, so I wanted to keep that in there so that you can see you can just go back over with another color and it's fine. I wipe it off after I'm done inking it on there, and I got a much darker green, which I think fits better. I wanted to keep it in there so that you could see. Don't be afraid to change things. If you don't like it, change it, because now I have a fully completed dice and I'm much more happy with the results, which is great in the long run. And now one thing that's imperative is that after you're done painting the dice, you have to take a picture with your green painted thumb next to them to put up on Instagram and say, oh, haha, I've got a green thumb from all these forest dice. For the next set, I take some Citadel painted gold that I really like and put it on the dice set, and wow, the gold is fantastic. I absolutely love it. I totally get why people were saying paint it gold on the Tesseract style video. And bam, here are the fully completed sets for both the land and the moon druids. And man, I can't decide which one I actually like more. They're both so different, but really cool in different ways. This one has the flowers much more visible. The green is just this kind of accent color. It's not too distracting, but it's there and it's visible enough to where if you roll it on the table, you're immediately able to see it. But the gold on these just pop out so magically, so good. I absolutely love it, and I think it fits that kind of moon druid aesthetic or even a fey warlock so well. So I'm going to show you some of my standouts. First is the D12 from the moon druid set. I think that is one of my favorites. It becomes almost transparent, and then the red petals that were inside the D6 just look phenomenal whenever it's up against some light. The D20 has this almost white effect inside of there, and it's really good. My favorite from the Land Druid set is the D6. I think it just looks like you took a bushel of flowers and put it in some dice, and I love it. The D20 has some awesome colors with the red and the green, and honestly, I may say that the Land Druid set is more my favorite just because it's so different. With this one here, it looks like a Japanese cherry blossom with some green. I know that some people are really gonna like that. It's got that nice Japanese aesthetic. My wife would love the blue and purple one if she were still alive. Wish I wouldn't have had to sacrifice her for the soul stone, you know, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. The green one is my least favorite, I gotta say, and then the yellow one is pretty cool on the D4. Let me know in the comments which of the dice are your favorite, and I would love to hear if you like this type of video where I take a look at some subclasses and try and do some theme sets, and if so, what other classes would you like me to look at, or just throw some other ideas out there. Please subscribe if you like videos like this, and maybe share it with other people who you might want to make some dice with. Thank you for watching, I really appreciate it, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.